say someone wants to be a well-rounded climber and they've got goals in sport, goals in boulder and goals in trad climbing.
Yeah.
How would you approach that with them? Would you say that we should prioritize one at a time and build these up in different elements? Or would you say that is something you might want to do sort of all at once, and then any tactics you might do with that person?
I'd probably do it one at a time, I think, and I'd see which one is weaker and then maybe build up the weaker area first.
So go from a building out weaknesses approach.
Yeah, and then hopefully building out the weaknesses in one area will then help push the other area up.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Ask Lattice. Today I'm joined by Rhos, and Rhos is a new coach here at Lattice Training. Rhos has been, is a very well accomplished sport climber, trad climber and boulderer. She's also currently on the GB team, so a competition climber as well. She's flashed an 8A plus sport route, which is a very impressive achievement. And you've also been a head coach climbing wall in Bristol. So quite a lot to ask Rhos about today. But first I want to get into that really impressive 8A plus flash.
Yeah.
Was this something you've trained for in terms of, were you training for on-sighting or flashing routes? Did you do your research like Adam Ondra style, or was it an Alex Migos turned up and just, fluked it on the day?
Yeah, it was definitely more of the latter.
Yeah?
I was actually coming back from like an injury. I'd hurt my finger recently in the year, and sort of the only sort of training I could do was more like endurance training. So basically did like loads of base training because that didn't hurt my finger.
So you were feeling really fit at the time?
Yeah, so I guess in hindsight I didn't do that on purpose. I did that because that was the only training I could do, and then in hindsight that really prepared me for that trip. But I was like, we were travelling around competing, and then at the end of that I did like a 2-week stint in Soyuz. So I'd never been before, and it wasn't my aim to like flash or on-site anything, but I really enjoy that style of climbing because if you like do it first go, you can try more routes in the day. Yeah, so I'm like, well, if I do it first go, I can try like 4 more routes today. But I was going pretty well. So I was like, at the start, I was like flashing quite a few like 7Cs and 7C pluses. And then I heard that this other person had flashed this 8A plus, and I was like, oh, so it means it is flashable.
Okay,
so
you knew the sequence was not going to be like...
Yeah, I knew it probably wasn't going to be really cruxy, and it was quite a long endurance route. So I just thought I'd like give it a go, and then like totally surprise myself in doing it.
Did you talk to people to get as much like beta around the route as possible?
Yeah, 100%, yeah.
Okay, so you knew exactly what you were going to do. And
Yeah, and I think that does make a difference. I think that makes a massive difference between on-sighting and flashing. Like if you sort of know what's coming, it's a bit easier to prepare for it as opposed to just like totally blindly slapping away. But yeah, so this Czech guy gave me quite a lot of boot at the bottom and then managed to go to the top. But it was like, it's quite like, you do a boulder and then you get a good rest, and then you do another boulder and get a good rest. So it's quite easy to break down like that. So basically every boulder I was like, okay, just concentrate on the next boulder while I was resting, and then...
Knew you were going to get to a rest. Was that kind of helpful to know that where the hard sequences were? And you were like, I just need to make it through this and then I can rest. And then...
I'd basically...
So I guess break it down, you kind of chunk it into bits, don't you?
Yeah, I'd basically break it down, and then each boulder I was like, okay, I can try really hard on this boulder because I know that I'm going to be able to recover. And I guess earlier in the trip, I knew that I was quite fit and quite good at recovering. So yeah, I just knew that I had to get to the rests, and then...
Do you think that's one of the main things you would focus on if you're working with a client, or if you're a climber and you're looking to go for a trip where it's mainly about on-sighting or flashing? Is fitness your main focus? I mean, maybe particularly if you're climbing in France where the routes are a little bit longer than here.
Yeah, I think that definitely would play a part. I think you've got to be strong enough to do the cruxes, but I think maybe the most important thing for that is like head game. I think if you're climbing really well and you feel like you're climbing really well, it's a lot easier to flash routes and like not put too much pressure on yourself to flash routes. But obviously the endurance and the recovery plays a big part in it as well. Yeah,
okay. Do you have any rituals you go through before you get on a route you know is going to be hard to flash? Is there any like getting in the right headspace, or is it come naturally?
If I'm honest, I don't specifically save routes for the flash or anything like that. So I don't I don't particularly have like a big ritual like that. I'm mainly just like, I'll just give it a go. Because I think if you do put too much pressure on it, then you generally climb slightly different. Like I'd climb a lot more tense and stuff, and maybe think about the sequence too much. Whereas if you just sort of forget about it and just go climbing, then I generally flow a lot nicer on the rock.
So you think taking the pressure off is quite important?
Yeah, for sure. I think I climb best when I'm having, like, it sounds cliche, but I think I climb better when I'm having like the most fun and like in a really good mental headspace and stuff like that. So I think that's the most important thing for climbing, especially for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I wanted to ask, who are your most inspirational climbers?
Oh, my most inspirational climbers.
Is there some style you emulate in other climbers, or?
I don't know. I don't know if it's more that, but I do have 3 people who I generally like look up to, or like, I think Katie Whitaker would be my first one, because when I was like younger and climbing, I'd see her in all the climbing films, and I was like, wow, that's so cool. Yeah. And she's obviously a really good climber. Yeah. She's got a really nice climbing style as well, like very technical and like flowy, which is nice. And then Libby Peter would be up there as well. Okay. Top girl crush as well. Yeah. I hope they don't watch this. They'll find it super cringe. And then I'd probably put like Brooke Rabutu up there, more of a recent one. Yeah, I just think she's got a really nice climbing style. She mixes it up between comps and rock as well, which I really appreciate. Yeah. And yeah, it's quite nice to her.
She was my favourite for the Olympics as well. I was watching her climbing, and I was quite gutted actually with her slipping on that finals route. But
on the bouldering as well, she was so close to topping them in the bouldering. She just seemed to have like a really almost round, like did really well, but almost did quite a lot. But but she'll probably be there in Paris, won't she? So
yes, she's quite young in that climbing career, isn't she, in terms of competition climbing? So hopefully we'll see some pretty. But it's also
it's insane how much she came on since qualifying for the Olympics to then in the Olympics. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, when they're talking about the experience level of a lot of these climbers going to the Olympics, like Brooke seemed, obviously she's a very accomplished outdoor climber, but when she came in and we're talking about her competition like experience, comparing her to someone like Yanya, who's like, oh, you know, she's got like 30 gold medals, and then Brooke was like, she's got one that she got like a few months ago.
Yeah, in the seniors.
And then she was just still out there actually, like was
like absolutely smashing it.
Definitely the second best boulder in that round as well.
Yeah, for sure.
And doing really well with it. Okay, so I wanted to ask what your favourite form of training is, and then maybe what your least favourite form of training is. So we had Johnny in the other day, and obviously his most favourite form of training was core training.
Obviously.
Yeah,
for some reason. Yeah.
So what's yours?
Oh, I don't know. It's really hard. I think I generally do enjoy all aspects of training, because I think I can see how all of those aspects of training is going to help me with climbing. I really like board climbing because it's really satisfying when you do a board problem. Though there is a board problem next door that I still can't do, a 7A of Ollie G's that I still can't touch.
No, he's pretty good at board climbing, Ollie.
Yeah, and he's pretty good at undercuts, and there's this really beefy undercut move.
Oh yeah, he is the undercut king.
Yeah, which I just can't do. So that's my project to winter now.
Okay.
A 7A. Right. Yeah, maybe like the long end power endurance, like the really pumpy climbing, which ironically for a sport climber, I really hate being pumped. So I really don't like...
Well, it usually means it's about to fall off. So.
Yeah, I really don't like probably that long end power endurance, sort of like pumpy training.
That's your least favourite form?
That's probably my least favourite, but then I really like sport climbing, so... I think it's just, when I get pumped, I'm like, if I was fitter, I wouldn't be this pumped.
Would you say, as a sport climber, like people will do different things to achieve the same outcome? So in sport climbing, you'll have climbers that get really strong, so the moves are relatively easy, but they will maybe neglect or just don't really want to train the endurance aspect of it. So we might say they're a strong climber for the grade, whereas you might have a fit climber for the grade as well. And I think people naturally shift towards that style, maybe just because genetically, like they respond better to that form of training. Would you say you're more of a, I'm strong for the moves and I can bring the difficulty down to my level, or would you get through with fitness?
I think in the past I used to be maybe really fit for the grade, so I'd be pretty good at endurance but then quite weak, but then I'd find maybe like a more technical way of doing the climb. And then I think I found that only got me so far, and then I like switched it around and I really worked on my like power and board climbing. So maybe now, and then I probably have neglected the endurance side. So maybe now I'm probably the other way. Okay. But I think I prefer it that way because I think fitness still comes quite quickly to me. So if I get really strong for a project and then I'm like, okay, I'm not fit, I can like train the fitness towards the end and hopefully get fit.
And that comes quickly then?
Yeah. But it's different for everybody, obviously.
Would you say board climbing was that one tool that you used to really build up your strength more than other things?
Yeah, that and pull-ups, yeah. I used to not be able to do many pull-ups, but now I can like solidly do 10, so
nice.
That's good.
Good effort.
I know, thanks, yeah.
Cool, okay. So we were talking just before this about your sort of like multidisciplinary background, which is quite impressive. So obviously you've got that GB team thing. You're quite a good and well-accomplished competition climber.
Maybe,
You've climbed...
It depends what you mean by well-accomplished.
Yeah.
But
Well, I think you're quite a good comp climber.
Yeah.
You've climbed E6 trad, 8C sport, and 8A boulder, which is very well-rounded. I'd say like that's quite well accomplished.
Yeah.
Have you balanced all of those throughout your climbing career? Have you kind of shifted between those? Is that something you've drifted between different disciplines and focused on a different time, or is it you've kind of brought those all up at the same time?
So I definitely used to be more sport and not boulder at all. So I think when I sport climbed that 8C, I'd probably only bouldered like 7C outside maybe, which maybe is quite low in comparison.
Is that because you were not actually bouldering much? You're not really projecting things?
Yeah, I think I just always gone sport climbing and I really enjoyed sport climbing. So I was like, oh, I'll just like stick to this. And then I think we had that lockdown and I could only like train on a board. And then, so I got pretty good on the board and then I was like, went outside bouldering and was like, oh, I actually really enjoy this. So then brought my boulder grade up to maybe a more acceptable level for a sport climb.
Say someone wants to be a well-rounded climber and they've got goals in sport, goals in boulder and goals in trad climbing. Yeah. How would you approach that with them? Would you say that we should prioritise one at a time and build these up in different elements? Or would you say that is something you might want to do sort of all at once and then any tactics you might do with that person?
I'd probably do it one at a time, I think, and I'd see which one is weaker and then maybe build up the weaker area first.
So go from a like building out weaknesses approach.
Yeah, and then hopefully building out the weaknesses in one area will then help push the other area up. So like if you're weaker in bouldering, then pushing your bouldering is going to help your sport climbing.
And this is kind of what you did with your sport climbing when you were a fitter climber back in the day.
And now I'd say I'm a stronger climber. But I'd say actually the way to get better at sport climbing for me personally was bouldering. Yep. So like when I started bouldering more, my sport climbing like exponentially got better. Maybe not better in grade, but definitely more consistent. So like I'd perform more consistently at a level just below my max, which I think is always a dream. Get a good pyramid, isn't it?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, it's all about the pyramid.
So there you have it. Basically, if you're a sport climber and you're neglecting your bouldering, that's what you need to do to get better at sport climbing.
Go bouldering.
Start getting stronger.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, well, we'll wrap it up there. Thank you for talking me through all of these very interesting points.
No worries.
We'll catch you next time. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you later.